Imagine a world where Apple, the tech giant we know today, almost vanished. Not in some distant alternate reality, but in the harsh, unforgiving landscape of the 1990s. What if I told you that the company which nearly saved Apple wasn't Microsoft, or even some Silicon Valley titan, but a small, relatively unknown firm that revolutionized computing in a way you might never have heard of? This isn't just about a brand. It's about a hidden chapter in tech history that could have rewritten the future as we know it. To truly grasp the gravity of this situation, we need to transport ourselves back to the mid-1990s. Apple, once the darling of Silicon Valley, was in a tailspin. Their market share was plummeting, their product line was bloated and confusing, and their operating system, System 7, was showing its age. Microsoft, with Windows 95, was eating their lunch, offering a consumer-friendly experience on cheaper, widely available hardware. Apple's once vaunted innovation had stalled. They were bleeding money, losing talent, and constantly cycling through CEOs. The consensus among analysts and even some former employees was grim. Apple was weeks, maybe months, away from bankruptcy. They desperately needed a new operating system, a modern foundation that could power their next generation of computers and reclaim their innovative edge. They had tried and failed multiple times to build one internally, projects like Copland and Gershwin becoming infamous money pits. The board knew they couldn't afford another misstep. The search was on for an external solution, a miracle cure for their terminal illness. This wasn't just a simple software upgrade. It was a desperate quest for an innovative core, a beating heart for a dying titan. The problem was, Apple needed an operating system that was not only powerful and modern, but also could be adapted to their existing hardware and, crucially, run legacy Mac applications. This was a monumental challenge. Several strong contenders emerged in this high-stakes technological battle royale. There was BOS, developed by former Apple executive Jean-Louis Gasset. It was innovative, multi-processing capable, and designed from the ground up for multimedia. Many within Apple saw it as a strong candidate, offering a fresh start. Then there was Windows NT, Microsoft's enterprise-grade operating system, a powerful and stable platform running on a variety of architectures. The idea of Apple adopting Windows NT seemed almost sacrilegious, a sign of ultimate surrender to their arch-rival. But the desperation was real enough for it to be considered. But lurking in the background, a darker horse, was Next Step. Built by a company founded by none other than Steve Jobs himself after he was famously ousted from Apple in 1985. Next Step was a technical marvel. It was based on a Unix-like kernel, Mac, offering rock-solid stability and memory protection that was light years ahead of System 7. It featured a groundbreaking object-oriented development environment that allowed programmers to build complex applications with unprecedented speed and efficiency. Its user interface was elegant, and its powerful networking capabilities made it ideal for scientific and academic institutions. Next computers, the Black Cubes, were engineering masterpieces, but they were also prohibitively expensive, and the company had struggled to gain significant market share. The technology, however, was undeniably visionary. The challenge with Next Step was twofold: its perceived higher price tag for acquisition and the potential for an awkward reunion with its notoriously difficult founder. Many at Apple, burned by past experiences with Jobs, were wary of bringing him back into the fold. The corporate politics were as tangled as the technical specifications. Yet, the raw power and elegance of Next Step were undeniable. It checked almost every box technically, even if the personal dynamics were a minefield. The board found themselves in a difficult position. Choose a technically inferior but politically safer option, or embrace the visionary, albeit chaotic path that Next offered. The fate of Apple hung in the balance, dangling precariously between technological salvation and corporate suicide. The rumors swirled for months. Speculation ran rampant throughout Silicon Valley. Would it be BOS? Would Apple, in a move that seemed unthinkable, truly embrace a piece of Windows technology? Then, in December 1996, the bombshell dropped. Apple announced its intention to acquire Next for $429 million in cash and 1.5 million shares of Apple stock. And with Next came Steve Jobs. The prodigal son was returning, initially as an advisor, but everyone knew this was far more significant. The decision to buy Next wasn't just about obtaining an operating system. It was about acquiring a complete vision, a philosophy of software development and design that directly opposed what Apple had become. The BOS acquisition, while technically sound, would have been a purely transactional purchase of technology. The Next acquisition, however, was a strategic play to reclaim Apple's very soul. Jobs, upon his return, swiftly dismantled much of Apple's existing product line, streamlined operations, and, most importantly, began the arduous process of integrating Next Step into the future of the Mac. The task was immense. Next Step, while powerful, was not a consumer operating system. It lacked the user-friendliness and the broad application compatibility that Mac users expected. The challenge was to marry the robust, Unix-based foundation of Next Step with the beloved Macintosh graphical user interface and ensure that existing Mac applications could still run. This led to the development of Carbon and Cocoa, frameworks that allowed developers to either port their existing Mac applications or build entirely new ones, taking advantage of Next Step's advanced features. The PASSION and relentless pursuit of perfection that Jobs brought back were palpable. He challenged engineers, pushed boundaries, and demanded excellence at every turn. The transformation wasn't instant, but it was relentless. Bit by bit, Next Step began to morph into what would become Mac OS X. The iconic Aqua interface, the dock, the powerful underlying Darwin kernel, all of these were direct descendants of Next's vision. Without Next and the return of Jobs, the Apple we know today, with its iPhones, iPads, and ubiquitous user experience, simply would not exist. It was the ultimate gamble, and it paid off beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The acquisition of Next, and consequently Steve Jobs' return, wasn't just a pivot for Apple. It was the ultimate lifeline that pulled the company from the brink of collapse. Next's underlying operating system technology became the stable, modern foundation of Mac OS X, which in turn powered the entire ecosystem of Apple products that followed, from the iPod to the iPhone and beyond. The stability, the elegance, the development tools, even many of the user interface paradigms we associate with Apple today, began their journey within Next Step. It wasn't just an operating system, it was a complete and coherent vision for computing that Apple desperately needed. To this day, a significant portion of macOS, and by extension iOS, iPadOS, and watchOS, still uses code and architectural principles directly inherited from Next. The very DNA of modern Apple is infused with the technology and philosophy of that seemingly small, almost forgotten company. We can only wonder what the tech landscape would look like if Apple had chosen BIOS, or worse, if they had simply faded into obscurity. The ripple effects would have been profound, the entire trajectory of consumer technology altered. The story of Next isn't just a historical footnote, it's a testament to how crucial strategic decisions and the enduring vision of a few key individuals can fundamentally reshape the future. If you want more untold stories of how vision and desperation shaped the tech world, the next video explores the secret history of Google's acquisition that changed everything.